Hey, a little different show than what we have done, just because we're calling an audible tonight. Both Pat and Morgan are under the weather, so we will be doing the Omaha series or resuming that in a week. But today is bottled in bond day, and so it's an excuse for me to have a drink. Bottled and Bond Act. We are at 128th anniversary of it, 1897. I've got a couple of my favorite ones that we are going to get into. But first, before we do that, we will do our stereotypical housekeeping. And we will start with hold on. And when you do this by yourself, you make mistakes, but we make mistakes all the time anyway. We are proud members of the Bar Cart Co-op, which is a collection of friends that create content for the whiskey and other distilled spirits public. The Bar Cart Co-op YouTube and Facebook pages have information about upcoming and past special shows, which happen about every quarter, from blind tastings to distiller panels to discussions of special collaborations and the usage of unique grains. The Bar Cart Co-op has educational and fun episodes for your enjoyment. The oldest show in the group is Distillers Talk, hosted by Alan Bishop and Christy Atkinson. It is a conversation with people from distilleries and distillery adjacent that gets into deep and sometimes off the rails and back again discussions with their interviews. New episodes arrive at the end of the work week. And if that is not nerdy enough, please check out One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute. This is the show where Alan Bishop will answer any of your questions about distilling and often puts them to the test. It could be individual grains, entire mash bills, equipment, or methodology. New episodes come out randomly, so subscribe. And then we have the Bourbon Turntable, where they mix the love of music with the love of whiskey. They have conversations with musicians, writers, distillery folks, and common folks like us about music and whiskey. It releases every Wednesday on all your platforms, including YouTube. Right now, they are doing kind of a best of series here for a couple of months. So please look those up. If you missed one of those episodes, it's a good reminder to go back and catch up on it, because they're usually fantastic, always good. Then we have If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything, which is the show about spirits and paranormal among us, as well as the unexplained and the spiritual. Subscribe on Spotify to get the 4 previous seasons and the 5th season, which is in progress right now. And then we have, last but not least, the Whiskey Ring podcast, where David Levine does good interviews. David Levine takes good notes. David Levine has good awards. See, told you we'd make mistakes. David does all the things that we won't do. One thing I do want to lead you with, whether you're watching this now or if you are going to watch this thing later, is Deer Hammer Distilling, who makes really good whiskey. If you're not enjoying Deer Hammer, there's something seriously wrong with you. Deer Hammer put out their first ever newsletter. And in Deer Hammer style, they made fun of themselves for taking so long to do it. But one of the segments that they put on there was called Our Favorite Bad Reviews. And this is how it started off. They say, "We feel incredibly lucky to interact with so many amazing guests that come to visit us at Deer Hammer Distillery. It's always an honor to spread the whiskey stoke and play a part in enhancing the visitor experience of those who make the trek out to see us in Buena Vista. We've worked hard over the years to create a space that is fun, inclusive, and educational. Every once in a while, though, we get one of those terrible customers who feels the need to spew irrelevant hate towards a business via online review in an effort to hurt that business. While this sort of review definitely bums us out, they are also kind of funny to read. And one of the perks of owning your own distillery is that you don't have to apologize to these deplorable humans." Each newsletter, we're going to spotlight some of our favorite bad reviews as an effort to create something of a wall of shame. Congrats, R. Keen. You are the first one up. And I'm going to put this up on the screen as we check this thing out. It is hilarious. She says, assuming it is. "Coming here for just drinks, that's fine, but they don't always have their food truck open, so don't expect it to be if you want food. Eddie Line Brewery has their spirits and always has food. Also, the bartenders pick and choose who they check IDs on. I'm a girl in my 30s, and that looks relatively young. I get checked out, but a lady around the same age, but she rolls up with a stroller, no checking IDs for them. Spirits are good and drinks, but I had to leave many times looking for food. And Deer Hammer's response was, you forgot your ID and our bartenders could not legally serve you alcohol. You didn't spend money at our establishment, and the other customers that you are complaining about not being ID'd had previously had their IDs checked. Anything else you didn't like about your experience at our quote whiskey distillery? Maybe knock off another star because we don't make tequila, or because we don't sell shirts in your favorite color. This is pretty much a fake review from a terrible person who didn't have proof that they were of legal age to buy a drink and has no evidence of spending a dime at Deer Hammer Distillery. Bye, Karen. Please never return to Buena Vista. I'm assuming that was 100% written by Lenny, who is Lenny's cool and he makes very good whiskey. I enjoyed that thoroughly. Sign up for the newsletter for Deer Hammer if you have not already, and buy you some Deer Hammer if you have not bought some. If you're, well, they'll ship now. They can ship to a few states, mine now being one of them. And before we get going on stuff, I do want to say hello, Jesse. Jesse, I'm going to message you here later tonight. Emily, I was going to message you as well. So, you guys both have that to look forward to. Anyway, to recap, both Pat and Morgan are under the weather. And this is an excuse for me to celebrate Bottled in Bond Day. So I am going to start off by one, quitting out one of the apps running on the computer. Two, with this Tom's Foolery Bonded Bourbon. I have not hit this one in a minute. Matter of fact, I had to knock a bunch of dust off the bottle. I've gone through a couple of these, but I just haven't touched it. This isn't. It's made in Ohio. I think it's in Chagrin Falls, Ohio, which I think that's also where Bill Watterson of Calvin and Hobbes is from there, or from that area. Anyway, they put a lot of information on it as far as which plant, which warehouse, the bottling line. But they used to have, and this was distilled July 2015, bottled January of 2021. And their stuff was pot distilled for a long time. I don't know if they still have the pot stills, because the pot stills that they actually had were the ones that came out of the original Michters. So they had some history on their side. And they were using those for quite a while. And then it was my understanding that current Michters made them an offer to get their old stills back. They have a rye also. Actually, I have a few spirits, but I've had the bonded bourbon and the rye, and it's got some of that. What do I want to say? Some grain. There's a little bit of grain funk on the nose. And then some breadiness that's on here. I really like this. And then when I pulled the bottle out, I was like, oh, why aren't you enjoying this one more? And then I remember it's because for me to get it, I had to order it online, which is not always ideal. But this Tom's Foolery Bonded it's really, really good. I was curious for anyone who is paying attention. That would be, as of right now, just a few of you in the chat. As far as what some of your favorite bottled in bonds are, I've got a few here that I'm gonna sample a few of them. Some of my favorite ones that I've had though, Leaper's Fork had a really great bottled in bond. Buzzard's Roasted also. Old 55 out of Indiana. They make really good whiskey anyway, but they had a really nice bottled in bond. Bigger commercial ones, I love Old Overholt and Rittenhouse. Henry McKenna, I used to like it. It was a great $22 bottle until somebody ruined it at an awards because there was a honey barrel. Because it is Henry McKenna single barrel, and this Henry McKenna, this particular single barrel was a bit of a honey barrel, and so now it's like $55 to get Henry McKenna because one barrel was exceptional. And I'm open to be wrong on that as far as all the details, but I don't really think that I am. But it really ruined it. Still 630 if you can get a hold of their products. They're out of St. Louis. They had a bottled in bond sorghum whiskey. And that was as good as it sounds. Wallersheim bottled in bond brandy. That was another one of my favorites that I had. But I'm curious for you guys to mention what some of your favorite bottled in bond ones are. I also do have another favorite, excuse me, because I have something in my eye. Evan Williams bottled in bond is just solid as all get out, and you cannot beat it for $17 for you just want a bourbon. You don't have to think about it at all. You don't. Evan Williams bottled in bond. You're not going to do this with it. You're not going to try to pick up notes. It's bourbon. It's a $17 bourbon. It's a solid bourbon. Maybe it's $18 where you're at, but it used to be $14 forever, and it was phenomenal. Another one, JTS Brown bottled in bond. I can get normal JTS Brown around me all the time, but I can't get the bottled in bond for anything. This is really good. Yeah, this Tom's Foulet, it's got really. I hate saying craft notes, but it has the grain forward that you get, and like I said, there's a great breadiness on the nose. Lot of vanilla. There's a lot of vanilla and little pepper. Just a little pepper that comes through on it. It is. What's the other thing I'm getting on here? Oh, a little cinnamon. And like a confectioner's sugar, powdered sugar, whatever. That's really good. Again, find it. I haven't bought a bottle in a minute, but yeah, look it up. They were, they had been through a few bottles, and this one was just kind of, I have too many bottles. I'm not saying I'm going to hand them all out, but you acquire them over time. Stuff is 6 deep, so you don't see everything on there. And I keep saying I'm going to do this because I had read where someone else did this. I have all my stuff in a spreadsheet, but they had put their stuff essentially on index cards. You could do the same thing with a spreadsheet, but then they would either ask the phone for a random number, or they would roll the dice, and whatever number, because either the cards were numbered or it's a cell that was numbered, it's like that's the one you're having. So it wasn't, oh, I'm just going to grab this. You let fate decide which one that you are going to grab and pour, which I think that's a really good way to do it. I'm going to pull up these because, again, doing it by myself here. Miss Emily, because ladies first. Yeah, old granddad's still pretty good. Yeah, you can't hurt that. And then, the bourbon Rubenesque. Yeah, I've got a couple of the wood hats, and I've got the ones that I've got, except for the Bloody Butcher. Bloody Butcher's open, and there's 2 Bloody Butchers that I have open, but my other wood hats are all I haven't opened them yet. One of them I'm waiting. Well, I'm not. I'll open it eventually, but it's it's their first Missouri, the Montgomery County. I had a couple of bottles of that, and so I got one that I've got saved for now. But no, this is really good. This Tom's Foolery's very, very tasty. One of the other ones, which I am, let's see, nope, this side over here, right back in there, is my my field of French Lick, R.I.P. Spirits of French Lick. And they're the bottled in bond offerings of Maddie Gladden and Lee Sinclair. Maddie's my lady. It's on the very short list. If someone said you can only take one and have one bottle with you, or one bourbon with you for the rest of your life, Maddie is on. She's on the short list. Very good. A couple of housekeeping things though, just to keep up. So the Omaha series, I'm guessing we're going to have at least 12 of those shows altogether because this box right here, I'm not going to tip it all the way because it's a couple of deep. She's full, and Mitch and Morgan, they did some damage. And so we have all these samples organized, and there's probably a dozen different distilleries on there. Some of them, there's quite a few. I think there's actually of Wood Hat, there might be 8 Wood Hat samples. There's probably that many Spirits of French Lick, because when they went through on this epic road trip, Mitch's last stage where he went back to Kentucky to grab all their stuff and then drive to Omaha, he decided, because he wasn't going to be back there for a while, that he would stop at French Lick. And he did when our friend Alan was gone. Justin had taken over the distilling at that point. And so he went in there and met him and picked up probably one of everything because Mitch. And same thing with Wood Hat. He spent some time there with Wood Hat, and I'm pretty sure he bought one of everything that Wood Hat makes. Which again, it's Mitch, but you watch the show. If you have a whiskey, and you can get Mitch to make his Mitch face, his happy Mitch face, where he smells it and you see him go, it's pretty good. Morgan just smiles when she gets what she likes. We all have our tells, but yeah, those two are extremely generous with their massive box of samples that magically made its way to my house. Speaking of which, Mitch and Morgan we're going to hook up with them here in a couple of weeks. They're going to be in town, so we may have some things to post about that. Okay, I'm going to go on. I'm going to move to another one here, and this one has turned into quite a bit of a favorite, and it is not a tiny little craft distillery, but I think that they do use a lot of craft principles, as in we're going to do what it takes flavor first. One of the most transparent bottles that you'll ever see with all their series, but the Origin series, it's all their distillate. And this is the wheated bottled in bond, which they do have the mash bill on the bottle here, along with just a little blurb about themselves, but it is 100% their distillate. It's 6 years old, 48 corn, 20 wheat, 68 corn, 68 corn, 20 wheat, 12 malted barley, distilled fall of 2017. This sucker right here had some at Bardstown at their Distillery Row place. Got a bottle there, then found out that I can actually get it in town here cheaper than Kentucky, but then I don't get to go hang out with Mr. Kevin. So, but this wheated bottle and bond, it's like $45 for a 6-year bottled in bond whiskey that, quite honestly, it's got some of the best flavors, and it's got like this great on the palate. It's like this great brown sugar, oatmeal, vanilla, cinnamon. It's fantastic. And then there's a fruit sweetness, almost like you just added a fruit flavored sweetener that just kind of pops on there. It's so good. Haven't bought a lot of whiskey that especially in the last few months. I've been extremely limited and very picky because I have enough. But this is one I've gotten two of because it's just a really solid whiskey. If you like wheated whiskey, that's wheated, not weeded. If you like wheated whiskey, you should do yourself a favor and get this. If you like standing in line to get something with a green label that begins with a W, you should give this a try because it's better. If you're willing to pay a little bit more for Weller's green label, or you want to get closer to getting into the 107, I would give this a consideration at 100 proof. I think there is definitely more flavor than you're going to get out of standard Weller, and I don't have any 107 to do a comparison, but I'd be willing to wager that it would hold up extremely well as doing a blind comparison. It's just got there's a density to it that Weller has never had for me. So good. Okay. Oh yeah, I didn't finish the housekeeping. Next Monday we will do the Omaha series of the oh geez, what's their name? The name is escaping me. Hold on, I can tell you in just 1 second because where is it? Sideshow Spirits. Thank you, Self, for looking that up. Yeah, Sideshow Spirits out of Nebraska. We've got 3 different samples to go through with Mitch&Morgan, and I'm definitely looking forward to that because that is one that Mitch made his face when he was discussing this one. So very much looking forward to it. I have another wheated whiskey I'm going to jump to, and this is another one that's just outside of the state of Missouri. The Stumpy's Old Monroe's Straight Wheat Whiskey, bottled in bond. This one is, he did a release party. Actually met Mitch and Kevin and our friends, the Robinsons. They drove from Kentucky, and then there's a bunch of people from the St. Louis Whiskey Society that went there for it. The Ewalds came down. I'm trying to think of who else. And who else have participated in the chat. Anyway, Mr. Adam Stumpf had these barrels put off to the side in the distillery, and we'd gotten to sample those before at Cast Strength, and they were just fantastic. But there was plans to do this bottled and bond release. It's a very nice whiskey. Drinks below 50% alcohol. It's got just like a waxiness to the mouthfeel on it. The one thing I say it is, going in blind is the truth because you don't know what you're having. You can come up with your own assumptions. But we had done a blind tasting. It was us, Lisa Wicker. So it was us, me, Patrick, Lisa Wicker, Alan Bishop, and I think Kevin had hosted it. And this was the second whiskey that we tried. And it was the other thing with blind, just like any other tasting, your palate gets, I'll say, damage done to it the more you have because you've got lingering things, unless you're trying to do as much as you can to cleanse your palate. But everything affects it. What you ate that day, how you're feeling, all those things affect it. But the whiskey that we had before this one brought out some really odd notes. Because it was, a whiskey that I bought a few bottles of this. I went to the release party. I really liked it. But it brought these notes out that were just not there. And then we thought, well, for whatever reason, maybe Kevin got a bad bottle. And so a couple of weeks later, I got together with Kevin and brought one of my bottles and had his, there was no difference on it, but that the whiskey that we had before it, and again, it was a blind wheat challenge. The whiskey we had before it, which was a journeyman, it wrecked this whiskey. It wasn't awful, but it just brought out very harsh notes that weren't there. And it brought out, it's like it brought out just a really weird, coarse graininess out of the whiskey that again was not present in drinking it. Yeah, it's got that interesting, like, it's reminiscent, if you're old enough, that you remember the like wax bottle caps or the wax candy that had stuff in it, but that soft wax. It has that on just a hint of that on the palate. And then once it breaks through, then you get the flavors on this one. Still, it's a very good whiskey to drink. Just don't drink Journeyman before you drink this. Very good. I'm going to have an important water break. It's funny when you have other people on here, you can mute yourself, take a drink, go back to whatever because they're chatting away, but you got to watch this. Anyway. All right. I have a couple more that we're going to go through for Bottled and Bond. I'm not going to go through all of mine because that would be stupid. And that would be stupid. So we're going to do, I've got a local fella here. The J. Rieger Bottled and Bond Rye. I wanted to grab the Holiday, but the Holiday that I've got is Rickhouse proof, so that doesn't qualify. But I sure do like the Holiday. Someday I will go up there and pay a visit. I'm actually kind of bad about visiting local places. Not sure why, but I haven't had this Rieger Rye in a minute, and I remember when it came out being very surprised because they released it on 816. Yeah, August 16th, 816 area code for Kansas City, 816 day. Excuse me, the Riegers that it had before, it had a couple of monograms, and then of course the Rieger Kansas City. And Rieger's Kansas City, as Ryan Mabey when he was on before, he was, it was designed for cocktails. It's a finished, so to speak, air quotes, whiskey, but it was designed for standing up in cocktails. Whereas the Bottled and Bond Bourbon and Rye were more designed to be a Bottled and Bond Bourbon and Rye. And you do get, you get some nice, you do get nice, and I don't want it to sound negative, but it's not negative. You get some nice grain notes out of it, where you're not just nosing it and going, yeah, it's bourbon. There's just, there's like I get a little citrus, and that rye, it's not an MGP rye nose. MGP makes good whiskey, but there's a little bit of ripe fruit and what else am I getting off there? Oh, what the heck is that? Is it that ripe? It's more like a ripe citrus that I get. It just keeps blasting on the nose, where sometimes you'll get like a mint from a rye, that comes across there. And this is more like an expressed ripe citrus. It's got a refreshing quality to the nose. Yeah, I hadn't had that for a while. It's got there's a nice oiliness to it, and then you do get some of the baking spices, the rice spice, a little bit of pepper, but that citrus is carrying over for me still on this. Sorry if you hear the dogs barking. Little Barky boy is reacting to the door. But this one, and well, this and the bourbon especially, Mr. Dave Pickerel had worked with Rieger on getting that put together. Dave knew a few things about whiskey. What is the other note that I'm getting there? It's almost like custardy a little bit. Interesting. And granted, I've had 1, 2, 3 prior to this, so go back to the previously mentioned incident with Journeyman and what it did to Stumpy's. This is it. It's nice. I do quite like this rye. I like their bourbon as well, but I don't have any of it. And one thing which I've seen, which I think is unfair, but I saw it when I was with Pat up in Wisconsin, and there was I wouldn't say it was negative, but it wasn't positive when we were pouring, because we'd had the Rieger's Kansas City whiskey, and that doesn't compare to a bourbon because it's not a bourbon and it's not a rye. And there were some unfair comparisons that people were making to that, but we didn't have the rye or bourbon, which if you were going to compare bourbons, you'd want to compare bourbons. There was nothing wrong with the Kansas City whiskey. It has its purpose, and some people like to drink it really neat, and that's fine. Their bourbon and rye is better, in my very humble opinion. And Rieger seems to have pretty decent distribution, which is great for a small place. Tangerine or mandarin, maybe, but it kind of bordered a little bit on lemon, but not a lot of lemon. I've made a little note here. I'm going to go back and hit this one with fresh eyes, because I haven't pulled this one out in a while. So want to have it by itself and then see what we get out of it. But yeah, I like it. Local around, there's not a lot of distilleries around me. But local, the two biggest ones would be Rieger and Holiday. Holiday's got really great distribution, it seems like, as well. We also have Union Horse, which I like quite a bit. And then we have, what do we have? Restless Spirits is another one. And then there's Tom's Town. Tom's Town is, I don't know that it's really got a far reach. And same thing with Restless. I don't think they do, but Rieger's and Holiday seem to have the furthest reach anyway. Which is good. That means someone's buying it, and it's always good. Boost the local economy. Rieger, one thing which I like to mention, because I think it's awesome, very honorable of them what they did. But during the great pandemic of our lifetime, Rieger didn't lay anybody off. They kept the employees employed. And like so many other places, Rieger was making hand sanitizer, and it was kind of a free will donation. And people were lining up in their cars, and people were very happy to hand money to them for the much needed, at least at the time, hand sanitizer. And it kept the people in Rieger employed, and then the owners kept people employed. And so not a lot of places were able to do that, not just distilleries, but a lot of other places. And Rieger did. And that was just a good a good, not even really a gesture. It was a good human thing for them to do, because everybody was in the same boat. So I will always have respect for Rieger as a company for doing that. Okay, the last one that I have poured here, because we're not going to go a whole hour or anything. It's just me, and nobody wants that. Is this bad mother bottled in bond, the first release, the Leopold 3-chamber bottled in bond distiller edition, signed by Captain Todd, who Todd will be on in at some point. We've been working that out, but he's been a busy fella. So we've been talking with Todd because we got a couple of his other ones that we want to have, and he had some of the anniversary bottles that he was going to get. One thing which I thought was really interesting, this bottle number that I got from him, which is they made 5,280 bottles. Go figure where they come up with that number, because they're in Denver. But I have number 528 of 5,280. So I thought that was kind of cool. And this one, I have not hit this in a while. I've got the 3-chamber holiday edition that I hit more because I was kind of saving this sucker because that was the first edition. And this thing's still, there's such a floral bakery, like heavy confectionery bakery, and just it's a subtle but thick nose on this. And that's one thing that I just always remembered about this rye was there was the like if you've had a pastry that was many layers, it's just a bunch of layers of dough, but all those layers of dough all brought in flavors around, even though it's all just a bunch of layers of dough that are all cooked. This is just so many layers of stuff that is it's compressed, and it takes a while to unpack it, and nothing just jumps out. But there's like little bits. There's like the floral notes, the lavender that carries all the way through. It's just a beautiful whiskey. I was very, very lucky that we knew somebody that was going there when it was being released, because we love mules. God love mules. Oh, this is so nice. So wow, I forgot how oily this is. If you haven't gotten to try, well, if you haven't tried anything Leopold, you really do yourself a favor and do. But if you haven't gotten to try any of the 3-chamber stuff, initially, the cost was high because the rye, nobody was growing the rye. They had to find somebody to grow the rye. So it was one place growing the rye. And if there was a problem with the rye was gone. And that was that. Also, first run on this for this 3-chamber still to prove a point. But some people who had tried this, and it also happened to have some pre-prohibition rye whiskey, did comparisons, and it was a very favorable comparison to how things used to be made because of the 3-chamber rye. I had picked up a bottle of the 3-chamber holiday edition locally. Somebody in a local group had just said, I got this, I don't like it, it's not my thing. And he wanted like $70 for the bottle, and he'd only had a couple of pours out of it. And I jumped all over it. And then we met and we talked about it. I'd asked, well, what was his expectation of the rye, and he had mentioned some other ryes. Well, half of the ones that he mentioned were MGP ryes. Again, not a problem with MGP. They make fantastic whiskey. They make a lot of it, but he was used to a certain rye profile. And then he also mentioned other ryes, but if I remember right, he wasn't a fan of Pikesville, and Pikesville's got an aggression to it, which I actually quite like. But he had mentioned his other ryes, but mostly it wasn't his thing. It just was not his thing. And he had spent more money than he intended on spending on a rye that he wasn't prepared to sample. And I got the good end of it. So because it was a rye that I understood because I had it before. But if you're looking at it up on the shelf somewhere and you're curious, like, I don't know, is this thing worth it? It's not, and I'm not knocking any other brands by saying this. It's not Bullet Rye. It's not, it's certainly not Templeton Rye. It's not Redemption Rye, and all of those are MGP. It's also not Dickel Rye, which I think Dickel Rye is MGP. Unless you get the Dickel Leopold collaboration, which is Dickel's Rye. So yeah, no, this is it's quite different because it's not. You wouldn't think it's a rye whiskey. You would almost think, is this an Irish whiskey? At some point or some kind, or is this possibly a Scotch or someone's attempt at a Scotch, just because of the really nice fruit and floral notes that just carry through there with like this. It's carried like on a wave of, it's not just vanilla. It's almost like vanilla with a little caramel to it. And maybe that's a specific thing that has its own name. And if it is, Emily will say something because she knows all. But yeah, it's just like this. It just, it's like you're holding up this dense part, this dense thing that you're just pulling in front of your face. It's just there, and it's dense and full of subtle flavors, but nothing's slapping you. I mean, there's nothing jumping out and saying, hey, it's this. Hey, it's this. It's just such a great whiskey. Wow, that's good. And then there is a little, like on the end, it is like a little custard. Man, that's oily. I forgot how oily that was. Holy cow. That's so good. Okay. Well, we're going to wrap this one up. I've done my damage. I think which one? I poured a little bit left in the glass here. Pretty sure this is the Bardstown. Yeah, so do yourself a favor if you're looking for any bottled in bond and you want to try something different. The Tom's Foolery was fantastic. Also, this Bardstown Origin wheated whiskey is so good. The Rieger's Rye bottled in bond. I like it. Again, the things with rye, there's people that say they don't. I've said this before. People say they don't like rye. They've probably only had a rye that came out of one really large distillery. And people say that they like rye. They've mostly probably only had rye out of one large distillery. There's a lot of different ryes out there. Pikesville is another one that's just, you want to get a little bit different with rye. Sagamore, especially if you get into a Sagamore cask strength, you want to go for a ride. You want to get slapped around. That Sagamore cask strength rye is, it's great. It'll do the trick. Another one, if you can find, now it's Old Monroe. This is the old labeling of Stumpy's because this was a couple years ago. And then finished up with the first edition Leopold bottled in bond 3-chamber rye whiskey. Yeah, you know what? I would say closer to creme brulee. I've not sought out the flan. My first experience with it, we had gone out to dinner, and it was my birthday, and we went to this restaurant, and they heard it was my birthday, and they brought this thing out, and this stuff, it looked like a cube of fat, and it had the texture of lard. And it just, I looked at it, and I touched it with the fork, and it just had this weirdness to it. It's like, I don't think I can do this. So yeah, so that was, it has not made me seek out flan or flan, however you want to say it, but I'm open to try anything. But yeah, sometimes when the structure of what it is that you're going to eat makes it look like it's not going to process in your body, it's really hard to want to jump in and have that. So anyway, so as we always say, as I close out here with the Bardstown, it's not the size of the den that matters, it's the love of the whiskey. Forlorn Hope, thank you for watching this little short episode. We will be back with the group. Hopefully everybody will be feeling better back then. And next week, we will do episode 3 of the Omaha series. And this is Sideshow Spirits. And this is the trek. Mitch and Morgan went on a trip from Kentucky to Wisconsin, down through Iowa, over to Omaha, back to Kentucky, back to Omaha, back to Kentucky one last time, and then back again. So, and these were all things acquired on that journey, and they acquired the hell out of stuff. So, we have a lot of these things to go through, and a few of them that we've not had any of their stuff. Sideshows being one. Looking forward to having that one, and then there's a few others that are in here as well. So, yeah, in the Omaha series, we could end up be doing like 12 of these. We do have we have some interviews coming up. We're trying to get a lot of things nailed down on there because people have their schedules and weird things going on in the world climate that have that changes people wanting to schedule things. But we will be back on doing some interviews with people as well. Bourbon on the Banks. They will start selling tickets the week of the 17th, I believe. So if you want to go to Bourbon on the Banks and you haven't gone to Bourbon on the Banks, you should buy a ticket to Bourbon on the Banks and go to Bourbon on the Banks. It along with Distill America, which tickets were on sale for Distill America already. So go to that one as well. Two are favorite whiskey events, not only because it is not astronomically priced, but because all profits in both cases go to charitable or scholarships for local places, and also the people that organize both of those are both incredibly nice, and it's just they're both really cool events. So if you want to go on a trip, please check those out. So as I said before, it's not the size of the den that matters, it's the love of the whiskey. So cheers, and we will see you all next week.